Hello, John. Welcome to our first ever episode of the first ever DA podcast. Mm-hmm. You went to the Oval Office, the big, beautiful Oval Office.
Something similar to our set over here.
Right? And I don't want to know what it was like inside. I want to know what it was like in the corridors. Hello, John. Welcome to our first ever episode of the first ever DA podcast. It's so exciting that you are our first guest. I don't think we would have had anybody else on this podcast, so welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be with all of you guys.
I don't think it's fair to just say hello, John. I think we should say hello, Farmer John.
Hello, Farmer John.
There we go.
John Deere.
John Deere. The real John Deere. That's the real John Deere.
There we go.
How's your tractor driving going?
It's actually going very well. I've actually driven two tractors, one at Nampo in the big one and one at Nampo in the Cape. And you get behind one of those things and then they tell you what it costs when you get off. Luckily, they don't tell you what it costs before you get on. You'll be too nervous to drive.
So tell me, are you going to
buy 3 Ferraris for one John Deere?
My goodness.
Tell me, are you pulling an Ivan Meyer at the next opening of Parliament, coming to Parliament with the tractor?
I might do that
That would
actually.
be
It's
cool.
actually not a bad idea. Not a bad idea.
That's good to have you, John.
That would be so cool. So, John, before we get into all the politics and the political side of stuff, just tell us about you, who you are, how you joined politics, what it was like growing up in KZN.
This could be scary.
Yeah. I'm keen.
Who's watching?
Don't believe everything you read in the media.
Exactly.
That was cool. I mean, I had a wonderful time. KwaZulu-Natal was a great place to grow up. Durban, great place to grow up. Sort of very normal middle-class family, and went to government school and Durban Northwood Boys High School, where, contrary to popular opinion, I did matriculate.
Oh, well done.
Did a year or two at Varsity College afterwards there. I didn't finish, as you know. And then got elected as a councillor when I was 22 years old, and went from there, spent 10 years local government. I spent 2.5 years in the Legislature in KwaZulu-Natal, and then came to Parliament in 2011, and I've been there ever since. Started out as an activist, branch member, became a branch chairperson eventually, but very lucky to grow up in a place like Durban North, which sort of had been a PFP, DP stronghold for almost its entire existence. Our former Member of Parliament was Mark Ellis. We've had a really strong PFP, DP tradition in Durban North, and it was always one of the more progressive seats in the country. So being a part of the DP then was great fun, and then obviously we became the DA in 2000. Yes. And the rest is history, and here we are today. I didn't think then I'd be the leader of the party one day when you started out, but
this is the way things work out, you know what I mean?
Things have a way of turning out.
Yeah, I know.
But also, I think, John, you've said something very interesting, that you became a public representative at just the age of 22.
Amazing.
And I think the party has continued that trajectory and that tradition of bringing in young people at a young age. Yes. Obviously, of late, someone tried to do something funny. But nonetheless, I think like some of us, myself, Nazley, and a whole lot of other people out there.
What about me, bud?
And Angus.
Yes,
And Angus.
I might look 40 odd, but I'm not.
Politics does it. He's actually 22.
Thanks a lot, John. Thanks. There you go.
But that's my point.
You know, John's pulling 23 at the moment. Yeah.
But also, just my point is that, sometimes you don't appreciate enough what the party does, and especially, I think, under your leadership now, we've had so many young people that have come up through the ranks and everything else.
Yeah, look, I agree with you. And, I always get frustrated when I go to speeches and you hear people saying young people are the leaders of tomorrow. I say, no, young people are not the leaders of tomorrow. They're the leaders of today.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And the more young people you get into politics and around the table, the better it is. And I've been very insistent, because I also had to overcome maybe you should wait a few more years. Gotcha. Are you really ready? Maybe you should do X, Y, and Z before you become a public rep. Nonsense. You get stuck in and you know what you need to do, and you stand in a place and you get on and do the work. And I think the party's benefited from it. Absolutely. I think, of course, we occasionally have a few factory faults along the way. but I think we get it right. It works out right more often than anything else. Yeah. And I don't think we should ever be an organisation organization where you have to get the gold watch of 25 years service
Correct.
before you can go anywhere.
Correct.
Absolutely.
And I think that's why also we've been able to attract people. And I think it's why we've focused so much on programs like the Young Leaders Program. And it has benefited the party.
Yeah,
For a long time. We've got
absolutely.
young leaders in key positions. They're mayors, they're speakers, they're MPs, they're MPLs, and the party's richer for it. And you look at the other side of the island, Parliament looks like a Sassa pay point eventually.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. It's cute.
Yeah,
I'll tell you
yes.
the interesting thing, though. When I joined the party, and when I became a public rep, so I became a public rep, I think a year or two after I joined, I found an environment that allowed me to be who I was.
Yeah.
You know, they're the values, and there's, you know, how we do, but you were allowed to build your own reality there. Obviously
Yes.
sticking within the frameworks, but
Yes.
the frameworks were there to enhance you as a person to be able to give your community
Yeah.
the best. So I genuinely think, and John's right, there are some rejects that come around, and they always will come
But
around.
they'll always
That's the
filter
reality.
out.
They'll filter themselves
Naturally,
out.
yeah.
Because the culture within the organization and the culture that's being created doesn't say to you that you need to do all of this before you do that. I love being a local councillor. Maybe one day my day will come when I do something different.
Got
But
you.
the reality is right now, this is where I'm performing for the organization at my best, and vice
Yeah.
versa for everyone else.
Absolutely.
And you'll find the people that filter themselves out are the people that actually are not in it for
the bigger picture.
They're in it for themselves.
Absolutely.
And they can't survive in an environment like ours where we don't have a leader worship syndrome. Where,
Correct.
Yeah.
you know, I like Herman Mashaba, you have to worship at the altar
Yeah.
of Mashaba, or
Yeah.
the PA, you got to worship at the altar of Gauteng.
And you're going to be a sacrifice.
We don't
an
have
offering.
any of that
Yeah.
leader adulation and worship
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
And we don't tolerate it actually in the party. And so you build your brand by building up others and doing your public service. You very quickly get exposed in the DA if you're not in it for the greater good and you're in it for yourself.
Absolutely.
And I think
100%.
that's the big
And
thing.
you end it
agree.
yourself, and
Yeah.
it doesn't take long. Some people last a bit longer there, but eventually it comes out.
Yeah,
You're out the door.
absolutely. I mean, for me, right, I feel like I grew up in the DA because I joined when I was 19. I've been here for 16 years. I've been a public rep for 11 years. And, you know, growing up in the party, joining the Democratic Alliance Student the values of the party and your values merge, and it becomes, you know, one, I'm not in the party for anybody. I'm in the party because I believe in the party, and I believe the DA is the only party that can rescue South Africa. And so you grow up part of the party. And a lot of people don't have that, and it starts to show.
So I'm interested. You've been here for 19 years. You've
16
done
years.
16 years. No,
Yeah.
you joined when you were 19.
I joined when I was 19,
So
yeah.
you also close to the 40 mark as
No!
well? Just checking out.
No, calm down. Still a while to go, Angus.
Details matter, yeah.
Listen,
you know what I
I'm
mean?
not in your bracket just yet. I'm still
thank you.
youth.
Look,
The guy pushing 50 is being very quiet.
John, also with your history, obviously you come from KZN. Don't you think it's about time you reconsider your support for Amazulu? I think it's about
No, never. Never. And all of my years in the DP when we'd lose by-elections and that we weren't to the winning side, I was always loyal to the party. And Amazulu's time is going to come. Our greatest days lie ahead of us.
So you're a Sharks rugby supporter as well, John?
Yes, I'm a Sharks rugby supporter as well. Sorry to tell you, Angus, but I'm very brand loyal.
Yeah.
And those are the teams I grew up supporting, and those are the teams I will be put down on the ground supporting. Yeah.
Yeah, but your family's entrenched in Cape Town now. I mean, I believe your daughters are out there. One of your daughters are out to Stellenbosch, so they Cape Townian.
Yes, well, I don't say my youngest daughter is the only one who can really call herself Cape Townian.
Right.
The other two are also Durban transplants. and I mean, even the Cape Townians don't let you become a Cape
Very
Townian
easily.
until you've bought a KWA jacket, you've lived in the
Okay.
suburbs for at least 25 years, and
You visited Bonteville occasionally.
occasionally. Then they start inviting you around to their houses.
Yeah, well, but John,
You have to
once,
wait.
if you do reconsider Kaizer Chiefs as forms available.
Okay,
Yeah.
well,
I don't know.
But John, it's been a year now in government, and what a year it has been.
sure, what a year.
Like maybe for yourself, for your side, what has changed? Because now the DA is a part of government, and I think and the DA has been a part of government for a while, but now we're a part of government at the national level. Surely a lot of things has changed, but what has changed for you?
Look, a lot of things have changed, and the work has certainly gone up exponentially, the volume of work and the nature of work. So you're leading a party, you're leading a parliamentary caucus, and you're also managing a portfolio. And so the workload has increased significantly. And that's why I just laugh when I see these people say, oh, you're in it for the gravy train. And that's I would encourage everyone to come and to come and spend a week with me. And see whether you'd do, what we do, A, for the money, and B, whether you think it's that much fun on a gravy train. I slept at home in my own bed 2 nights in January this year.
Wow.
It's like 2 nights out of the month I was in my own bed. But it's tough. But you know what? It's what we were born to do. It's what we're about. A political party is about serving. It's about public service. It's about moving the dial so it helps people. So for all of its challenges and all of its setbacks, I still think it was the right thing to do to go into government. I think that we were able to rescue South Africa from terrible circumstances of MK and the EFF getting into government, which would have led overnight to a collapse. And I think if I look at what DA ministers are doing in their portfolios, wow. I mean, I think we've been able to demonstrate, South Africans, that we can deliver. And that for me is such an important thing, showing rather than telling, much more important and much more effective in politics.
So I'm quite keen to delve into that. But and you've spoken about the change it's done for you. And I mean, it's crazy. Personally, though.
Yeah.
What's the change been like on your family? What's the change been like for you, John? John not minister, John not leader, John not this, just John. What's the change been like for you?
It's been tough. It's been tough on a personal level. And look, you're all of us around this table are in the game. So you know that the people who bear the biggest burden for our careers are our family members. And that they sort of take the brunt of it. And often this has to be give and take. And sadly, it's our families that tend to give more than and the like. So you've got to focus more on quality time rather than quantity. But I think that would be the hardest thing, like missing out and seeing friends and the like. I'm supposed to be playing in a poker match with friends that I haven't seen for 6 years, and I've had to cancel that because
so you never cancelled because you weren't good at it?
No, I'm quite good at poker.
Okay, cool. So.
Richard Nixon funded his first campaign for the Senate through poker winning. So I think having a poker face is a good game.
It's a good strategy. I agree. But John, like, what are some of the ways that you balance? You know, Angus and I were talking, and we have like one day a week where this is like family night, and everybody has to come to dinner or to lunch, and every week to try and sort of balance between that. And I mean, you have three daughters, so how do you balance it?
Look, I mean, I must say, people always say, what do you get right and what do you get wrong? I get the balance wrong a lot. And as much as you set aside these nights and days, something comes up, like there's a crisis in the GNU, or somebody's gone and said something silly on Twitter, and suddenly, you're thrust into this maelstrom again of having to sort it out. And I always say the leader's office in Parliament is a lot like a sewage treatment works. It doesn't matter where you flush in the system;
just keeps
it eventually flows past the leader's desk.
Got you. And
so you end up having to deal with a lot of that. It is something I'm working on. As one of my personal growth goals was to try and set aside a Sunday. I try and make sure that I don't have any political work on a Sunday. The other thing that's very important, and I've also having to work on it, is to develop friendship circles outside of politics.
Oh, so important.
Because often you get caught up in this bubble, and it's so good for you because you'd be sitting, and we all live in the bubble, the media bubble, the newspaper bubble, the Twitter, the social media bubble, and we obsess and get absolutely worked up about things. And it's so refreshing to go to a braai or something, or just to a friend's house, and they say, how was your week? And you say, I'm so mad about X. And they're like, what? What happened? And it kind of puts things in perspective for you, that the stuff that we obsessing about is not necessarily what's going on in ordinary people's minds and voters' minds. So it's very good for you to have a hinterland in politics outside of politics. And so I've been quite deliberate over the last year and a bit to try and develop more friendship circles outside of
I
the
love
political
that.
game,
We should,
which is
for
good
new
for your
friends.
mental sanity.
Yeah, and makes you a well-rounded individual. Because relationships have that. But John, we know that you're an avid reader, and we know that you love reading. What are some of your top books, and what are you reading right now?
I'm reading Jordan B. Peterson's 12 Rules for Life, which I've really started to enjoy. I've just finished Wandile Seshlobo and John Kirsten's book, The Uncomfortable Truth About Agriculture. And so generally what I have on my bedside table is I try and read 3 books at the same time.
Wow.
I read a fiction, and it's very important to read fiction, apparently. I don't do a lot of it, but it's very important because it stimulates a different side of your brain.
Okay.
And then I generally have a biography. I think it's always good to learn from previous politicians and people who've been in government. And then I try and have an extension book like a Jordan B. Peterson or a sort of business book or something like that that's forcing you to think outside of it. But I'm enjoying the Peterson, and I would highly recommend anyone who's interested in agriculture to get to the real nitty-gritty of the challenge that we're facing in South Africa, to read Wandile and Johan's new book on agriculture. It's very, very, very good.
John, just as you were speaking now, like a silly thought came to my mind to say, you are a father of 3 daughters, you're a minister of agriculture. I feel sorry for the guys going to pay your wallet to you.
Exactly. And you also forgot I'm a clay pigeon shooter, so I have a nice selection of shotguns as well.
But also just one on that, John, if there's one thing that perhaps we don't appreciate the DA much on, is we've had so many ministers in South Africa, but I think you are the Minister of Agriculture. Everyone knows now that there's a Minister of Agriculture. And maybe this might be a silly question, but what does actually the job entail? Because I think over the past year, we've actually seen what agriculture can be about. Because, the other day, I walked into my local shop and I went to the bread aisle and I was like, hey, by the way, John has decreased the price of bread. I'm like, this is real bread and butter issues. And I'm like, but hold on, it's been 30 years, so no Minister of Agriculture from the ANC has ever thought of actually affecting the price of bread. Were they incompetent? Was there no willpower?
Yeah.
Well, look, agriculture is, I think, one of the most important portfolios. And a lot of people say, why did you choose agriculture and not home affairs or education? And those are important portfolios. But what I see in agriculture is a huge opportunity for greater growth and potential. If you look at the first quarter GDP this year, agriculture led the way. Secondly, our biggest problem in South Africa is unemployment.
Yes.
We have the highest youth unemployment, and the shape of our unemployment in South Africa is largely underskilled or unskilled because of the fact that so few people have access to higher education and post-school opportunities. Yeah. And so there's only a few ways that you can absorb large numbers of unemployed, underskilled or unskilled South Africans. Tourism is one of them. Industrial processing is another, but the third is agriculture. For every hectare of apples that are planted, it's 1.5 jobs that are created.
Wow.
And that's through the value chain. And through managing the value chain and creating an enabling environment, because that's the job of the Minister of Agriculture. It's not to farm. Government shouldn't farm. Yeah. If you want to see what happens when government farms, look at Daybreak and what happened there. Our job is to create the enabling environment for those in the agriculture space to flourish and grow.
Absolutely.
And I think, and then also remove as much of the friction that's preventing them from succeeding. And so you spoke about the bread price. That was through an assignee that had been approved that was going to dramatically see an increase in grain and bread prices going up. And we were able to say, hang on, this is not a good idea. We've got a directive to lower the cost of living. And this is something that we can do from the agriculture space to play our part in it. So I think that it was good to see, and there's plenty more. We're doing a top-to-bottom review in agriculture on how we can cut friction.
This is just what I want to try and discuss, because obviously agriculture is a huge economic driver. Agriculture has if we have the right policies in place, you create more employment, you create more economic activity, and more than anything, you're able to reduce the cost of food at the supermarket counter more than anything else. How is the price of meat determined? Because one day it's 120 rand a kilo for lamb, the next day it's 160. How's the price of lamb?
Angus beef.
Angus beef.
Angus beef.
Yeah, we got
Angus has got a beef now this morning. You see that? Yeah, so look, I mean, it's all supply and demand. It's all market driven. There's no intervention. Prior to our democracy in South Africa, we had control boards, egg board, the meat board, and they would essentially control prices. A decision was made in 97 that we're going to open up the sector, and it's largely determined by market prices. Why you've seen a jump in meat price lately is because of the outbreak of foot and mouth disease, particularly at one of the largest feedlots in South Africa at Cllr beef. And what has happened is the supply has been throttled, which means that the demand goes up and the price goes up with it. And that's also why we're proactively vaccinating now in cattle in South African feedlots, but also with chickens. We've started the first rollout of a chicken vaccination program so that we can prevent the type of wipeout we saw and the huge food inflation we saw the last time there was a avian influenza outbreak in South Africa, where the price of eggs, you may recall, went through the roof. All the people on the Tim Noakes diet went crazy. Abbo's eggs, through the roof. And bearing in mind,
I tried it.
You tried it probably the wrong time, and you then got bankrupted because of the price of eggs.
I never lost kilos. I lost money.
And that's what they're all saying. What's that got to do with the price of eggs?
There you go. Right there.
So we're taking some proactive steps now to try and ensure that we don't get the uncertainty and the waves that you get through these animal diseases. And so I'm pretty confident that in 6 weeks' time the beef price will start to normalize.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
You can go and get your steak back on the price.
Thank you very much.
More braais, got you.
Yeah, but one other thing
twice a week,
that we've been very deliberate about, and people maybe are finding this a bit difficult, but I don't understand why. You've been extremely aggressive in finding other markets for our produce in South Africa, especially in exports, and how you are saying that drives economic growth. Because I see sometimes online people are saying, why is John going to China? It's like the day is a liberal party, but at the end of the day, we need jobs. But you've been so deliberate, aggressive, consistent in doing that. Why is that so important?
Yeah.
It's so important because if you read Wandile Sishlobo and John Kirsten's new book, it shows you exactly why. That if we want to grow the agriculture sector in South Africa, we've got to expand our markets. And I think that we are uniquely positioned in South Africa. We've got a lot going in our favor. Firstly, our farmers and farm workers in this country are the best in the world. And wherever I travel overseas, they are hugely well regarded. Think about this for a second. We are competing on international markets, and we're shooting the lights out with our citrus, with our fruits, with our wines, in a completely unsubsidized market. And we're competing against heavily subsidized agricultural economies like South America and Europe. And yet our products are consistently shooting the lights out. And it's a testament to those in the agri space here in South Africa who do it. But if we want to grow the sector, we have to find those overseas markets. And I look at particularly places like KwaZulu-Natal and the Eastern Cape and our rural areas there. I think we've got the potential to become one of the beef capitals of the world.
Wow.
If you think about those people in those rural areas, they have such long-ranging indigenous knowledge around caring for cattle and animal husbandry and farming. Those fields should be full of cattle, and we should be having abattoirs in those areas that are helping us process that meat and then getting it out of the country, because that's when you unlock the value. You're getting the currency benefit. We are able, because of the rand, able to land stuff at a better price. But we're earning in return yen, dollars, euros, and others. And what that does then is it opens up a whole new way to broaden the market and make it profitable for people to do it.
I think it's the most amazing experience when you travel overseas and you're at supermarkets, and you go down the aisles, the wine aisle, whatever, and you see product from South Africa, you see the fruit from South Africa, and it's proud, but not many people actually realize the work that's gone behind to trying to get that product onto that shelf.
But also, you walk down a supermarket line as well, in a place like the UK.
Yeah.
And you look at what they sell as steak. I mean, it looks like
it's
anemic.
No.
It looks I mean, I don't think. I mean, it's got no colour, no. Like
those things are meant for gas prize.
Yes, exactly.
They're meant for wood and charcoal.
Barbecue, not the braai.
Literally the barbecue.
They asked one of those rugby players, the big rugby players, what scares them, and he said gas bras and single brandies.
That's absolutely amazing. I promise you, and I've seen it. You walk and you see your citrus on the shelves. You see the South African wines on the shelf, and it's a proud moment.
Yeah.
But just knowing how much more we could still do if we just have the right policies in place.
And that's why I say that agriculture is a sunrise sector. The sun is just starting to break on that sector, and there's huge potential. If we can get animal diseases under control, we will become the beef capital of the world, without a shadow of a doubt.
Through my purchases or
generally and internationally.
But also, John, another thing I think maybe you're also guilty of this. It's not that we're praising a fish for swimming, but when you go to the agriculture department, as you said, for the first time, the agricultural sector led the economic growth and the GDP in South Africa. Sometimes we must also say it's because of the leadership that comes with a political principle that is in the office, but also coming from a party that actually cares, as you've been driving job creation and everything else. But can you just maybe give us background, like in terms of what it took for you to get there? I know some people might just give us some bit of stick to say it's not John, but sometimes, guys, it's been 30 years and this has never happened. And now it's happening with only a year of a different crop of leadership in place. And I think, look, you can't really sing your own praises, but I think some of us should, like at some point.
I say it's always John.
Look, I must be completely honest. There are some really incredible people who work in the agriculture department.
Okay.
And I think that unlike some of the other departments, where I'm sure you'll be hearing some of the stories during various podcasts that will come with other ministers and other experiences. I've been generally quite lucky. I think a lot of people in the agriculture department are agricultural economists. They've gone through agricultural colleges. They're not interested really in the politics. They want to see the agricultural sector flourish. So, I mean, we've got a really great DG. He came from a town Agri College in the Northwest Province, and has worked his way up to a DG. Very, very, we've got some great DDGs as well. I think there are some problems in the department, and I've got some SIU reports and some internal audit reports. And one of the things that we've been criticised quite heavily by the AG prior to us coming into office there was lack of consequence management. So what we're doing now is putting into place an accountability framework where when reports come out where people are found to have not done their work, that there are consequences, and we need to be able to demonstrate that. There have been one or two cases where there's been clear corruption, and obviously those have been dealt with, or in the process of being dealt with. But perhaps for me, the biggest one that stood out was Onestapurt Biological Products, which is the reason why we are now having to import foot and mouth vaccines from Botswana when we used to be able to produce them ourselves. And OBP for me is an exact example. It's basically the Transnet, the Portnet, it's the Eskom of the agri-space that got completely abused through cadre deployment, through corruption and maladministration, to the point where it now was unable to even do its most basic functions. And so getting OBP back on its feet is it. But it makes me angry that I've now got to back order vaccines from Botswana when we used to be at the forefront of producing them. And Onestapurt, it was widely internationally regarded as one of the best places for animal disease. And it just shows you what corruption, maladministration comes in. And I'm hoping that being at the helm of that department, however long I'll be there, that we able to give agriculture pride in itself again and let it stand up on its own 2 feet and show off what it can do. But secondly, to leave the department and the entities with consequence frameworks and a clean, accountable government. And I'm determined before I leave to end up with a completely clean audit as well, in terms of the Auditor General as well.
But John, for me, I know nothing about agriculture. So what exactly is, what did you say, the ONP? What
OBP.
What is it?
Okay. So
I don't know what it is.
Don't feel bad. A year ago.
Thank you.
A year ago before I was minister.
I have no idea what it is.
I say don't feel bad
I
because
got you,
a year ago, before I got this department, I thought foot and mouth was something politicians got.
They kind of do, though.
There's a vaccine for that. There's a vaccine for that.
So, look, I mean, it's just an incredible department. And so OBP is Honest to Put Biological Products.
Okay.
And basically it was an offshoot of Honest to Put, which is the veterinary sciences faculty at the university. And what they would do is commercialize the products that were developed at OBP through extensive research into a variety of diseases: brucellosis, lumpy skin disease, blue tongue, Rift Valley fever. And
I've had some of those.
It had, so there was a world-class laboratory there and a production facility that was able to produce the vaccines. Eventually, the vaccines could no longer be produced because the water quality in the facility and the laboratory, the quality of the pipes and the basics just fell by the wayside, and the laboratory lost its accreditation. So it now it wasn't able to produce some of those big vaccines. And I mean, foot and mouth vaccine is a serious thing. It's very tightly controlled because it could be abused as a biological weapon.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So you thought that
the
president sat with the nuclear codes. We've got
the OBP.
I mean, it can cause serious damage out there as a biological weapon. So it's got to be handled carefully. So that's why also there's been a lot of saying, well, why don't you just let the private sector produce it? And one of the areas we're looking at is doing a thing manufacturing under license, but you've got to be very careful.
You have to,
because
yes.
if this stuff falls into the wrong hands, it can be.
It's a pinky and the brain situation. You know, pinky and the brain.
Taking over the world with OBP.
Yes.
John, you spoke about veterinary science, right? A mate of mine, his daughter was super keen to study veterinary science, but she struggled to actually find a university that offered it. And there are very few universities, not all the universities actually offered it. I think it was only at one point Grahamstown or someone that Rhodes that actually offered it. Why is there that limitation in a country that's so driven by agriculture and much needed?
Yeah, it's a function of the fact that there's accreditation through the South African Veterinary Council of faculties and through the department. So one of the things we're busy looking at doing is accrediting more universities. So a number of universities have made application. UNIS has made application now. University of Potchefstroom, the University of Fort Hare, and others are all making application. Obviously, we need to accredit so that we're producing veterinarians of the highest standard, which we currently do, which is why we end up with a shortage of veterinarians, because no sooner do we produce them that they're snapped up
then
overseas.
They're gone.
They leave.
And also, it's a type of veterinarian that we want to encourage into the sector. So, we've got enough vets who sterilize dogs, look after goldfish, and pets.
Give me my chronic medication.
Yes, but what we need is veterinary scientists who are absolutely specialized in animal production, animal health, so we can start to ensure that the national herd reaches a level of quality and stability from an animal disease perspective, from a meat quality perspective, through veterinary management. So we currently are below the international ratio of vets per animal in the country, and it's something we have to work on, but the department is actively looking at it. The other option that we're also examining is turning our agri-colleges, we've got 11 agricultural colleges, and providing an animal technician course at those, so that you can be like an assistant vet almost, and help fill that gap in the short term.
You know, it's so crazy to me that 2025, we find ourselves in a space and you walk into this department and you're like, these seem like the basics that you need and nothing is there. How was that for you, your first day in office and realizing we are so far back to where we actually need to be?
But before you answer, John,
Yes.
when we talk about your first day, we actually want to know what it was like to walk into the office actually.
Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah.
Yeah, what
I was
was
very
it?
happy to walk into the office because as I walked in, there was a big sign that said DA outside. Department of Agriculture. There it was. I felt right at home on day one. But anyway, so as you know, we are a split department. We were with Rural Development and Land Reform.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Agriculture, Rural Development, Land Reform had built and settled into a brand new building in Pretoria, a massive sky-rise, ultra-modern.
Wow.
When the split happened, as I said, we went through a divorce from Rural Development and Land Reform. And
That divorce, you weren't part of it, John.
No, we were in the divorce, but they got the house.
Oh, no.
So we had to move back to an old hospital in Pretoria
Yeah.
that some say used to be a mental hospital. So I promptly renamed it the farm, and then some people say, well, it's a funny farm. But we call it the farm. And it was really cool to walk in there. It's an old building. But the thing that amazed me most was the sort of adversarial relationship that it set in between organized agriculture and the department.
Okay.
There was a lot of antagonism and suspicion. And so we set out pretty immediately. I've developed 7 pillars, which I think are fundamental to taking the agriculture portfolio. And first amongst these was partnerships for growth. Because in the agri sector, the expertise and knowledge, the technology and the know-how is all in the sector. It's your farmers, your agricultural companies, it's your commodity organizations, it's your farmers themselves. They've got the knowledge and know-how. And what you need to do is create the enabling environment. And so the first pillar that I set out was partnerships for growth. Say, come on, guys, let's bring, and I set out that immediately meeting commodity organizations, organized agriculture, whether it was AFASA, the African Farmers Association of South Africa, whether it was the TLU, the Transvaal Landbou Unie, whether it was SAI, whether it was Agri-SA, to say, listen, guys, let's sit around the table, and I want you all to know you've got an open door, and nothing is off the table. If you see something that you think could be done better, if you see us messing up, let's work together in a constructive way to be able to ensure that happens. And I've deliberately gone out to build a good relationship with as many of these organizations as possible, because I want them to feel that they can pick up the phone and speak to the ministry about issues that they may have. And we really go out of our way within our means to try and meet them halfway in some of the things. Now, some of the things we can't do. And you have to be able to say,
yes,
sorry, I can't help with that.
Yeah.
But the other stuff, we've gone out actively to bat for it. And they've gave me a list of things they felt were priorities. And we've working our way through that list and trying to really demonstrate to them that this is a partnership and that we need them. And it's not my job to farm. It's not my job to tell them how to farm. My job is to build an environment that allows them
to do what they
be
do
the
best,
best
that they can be.
and improve their yields, improve their outputs, improve their prices, and include more people, particularly previously disadvantaged individuals, into value chains and into the sector, so we have a much more inclusive agricultural environment.
So, John, there's
So
obviously
important.
there's obviously moms and men as well, everyone that's listening to this that are currently shopping or that are cooking, right? If you get right what you've set out in your 7-point plan, is the cost of food going to reduce for the end user?
I believe we can. I think if we can focus on removing those friction costs, like that assignee service in the grain industry that I spoke about, if we can look at doing a number of things to reduce input costs for farmers, fertilizer, feeds, medicines, if we can help fix the transport networks, road,
the route
rail,
to market.
the route to market.
Yeah.
And we can massively help improve yields, which means you have greater supply into the market. I think that we can bring down the cost of food quite significantly. And it's going to take a lot of effort, but I believe that the steps that we're taking now can do it. If we get more producers producing chickens, more producers producing pork, more people producing beef, obviously the greater the supply is, and you're able to meet the demand better, so your prices will naturally start to come down. But at the same time, what you want to be doing is reducing those friction costs so that you also help the profitability at the starting of the value chain. You don't want to see farmers being screwed over by big retailers. You don't want to see milk producers being screwed over by big retailers. You want to make sure that you're growing the share of the profit through the value chain in a fair way throughout the value chain, and ultimately bringing good value to consumers at the end of the chain.
So corruption in agriculture. We must accept that before our time there most definitely was corruption. How does corruption play a part in ensuring that we're actually getting these things right and clearing up that corruption that existed?
Yeah, so corruption still exists. I'm not going to say that I came in and it's gone now. It's there. It's about getting to the bottom of it and finding where these networks are and working them out, and also making sure that people see that they're being held accountable. The biggest problem with corruption in the agri space is input costs that are meant to, or inputs that are meant to go to emerging farmers, particularly your small scale farmers that don't get there, they get redirected elsewhere. Farms that should be given to deserving beneficiaries find their ways into the hands of comrades and the connected few, rather than actually going to genuine beneficiaries who know how to farm and who can then turn them into profitable enterprises. You've seen grant funding being abused. So all of these things still bedevil the sector. And that is one of the key focus areas that we're bringing in, is around ensuring value for money in projects, making sure that the real beneficiaries get them, and that you don't then end up as well with this terrible waste that we've seen exposed by the Auditor General in the last 2 years, which shows at the end of the year there's all this fiscal dumping and people go and buy solar panels and seeds, and even though the seeds on for the wrong season and the like, and they're just lie in warehouses being wasted. We've got limited funds in the department. We've got to make sure that every cent that we spend is spent on ensuring sustainability, viability, and profitability.
I'll tell you that.
So important.
People don't actually understand that point generally, because when someone pays more for something in the shop, they don't understand exactly why they're paying more for meat, or why they're necessarily paying more for grain products, etc. They have a frustration towards government, and they throw it out there. But to actually understand that what John's trying to do, and in terms of his plan, is to try and clean up that mess, so that evidently that piece of steak that's being fried right now, or gas fried,
but then
having lunch.
You're making us hungry now.
But then here's something else that, as you're speaking, John, it's so refreshing to hear you speak. But where does this agriculture passion come from? Like, as you speak, because I know John,
he's always been farming,
chief whip, who's giving the ANC hell, who's quick on his feet, who's throwing barbs in parliament,
speeches.
Where was all of this agricultural passion hidden from?
It's not been hidden. It's just found a new way of expressing itself. Because at the end of the day, it's not about agriculture. It's about jobs and economic growth.
Yes.
And I'm absolutely passionate about that. I mean, what did somebody say? I'm a street fighter. I said, yes, I'm a street fighter. I'm a street fighter for jobs, and I'm a street fighter for unapologetically for economic growth. Because if we don't get jobs and growth, we're going to end up in a deep trouble as a country. There's far too many people who don't have the dignity of work, and our economy is not growing at the rate that it should be growing in order to absorb young people into the economy and to ensure that people can provide for themselves and their families. So the passion is there. It's always been there. It's just that I see the huge potential in the agri space for economic growth and jobs. And that's what drives the passion at the end of the day. I know that this sector is here and it's doing very well, but we can get it to here and it'll be shooting the lights out. And I know now what needs to be done to get us from here to here, and that's what we're busy implementing.
And also maybe, like as you're just speaking now, John, I think that's literally servant leadership. You know, I saw when you guys were out in Heidelberg, and I think maybe without even thinking or anything like that, when you guys were doing a presser, I think it was about the food and mouth disease. You literally took all the microphones and you held them for the MEC of Agriculture in Gauteng, who's from Rise Mzansi. I'm like, okay, that's actually servant leadership. But I think as I said, watching that presser, you didn't even think about was no big deal around it. But for me, it was saying it communicated so much without even you actually trying to communicate or trying to do or like something about it. Because one would think, like especially at home, voters always think that we are enemies with like some of these parties, that we hate them. But seeing you holding all the microphones for her to speak and giving her the opportunity to speak, and also knowing that you'll also get your turn. I mean, that's servant leadership.
Yeah, well, you guys would know. I mean, I'm very passionate about flat organizations and not having these hierarchies where you have leader worship. And I've seen parties that go down the tubes because of that. So, we don't have this leader, I'm John, and everyone calls me John in the party. And it's the same there. You'll be very proud, Ivan May and I are the only males. We've got the rest of us all females in the agri space. All the MECs are females. And I'm very lucky. I've got some very good ones.
Minmax awesome.
Yeah. So, and we don't come from the same parties, but we have to work together.
Yeah, collaboration.
Of the thing is, so, I mean, I wouldn't say, for instance, well, this MEC is not from my party, so I'm not going to make sure they don't get vaccines or the like. We are working together in the agri space, and they've got a job to do. I've got a job to do, and if they do their job well, it's a win for the sector, and that great cooperation. And I've got a good relationship with all of those MECs, and I'm very lucky because they also share a passion for the sector.
Agriculture.
For the sector.
Yeah.
What was your first
so
cabinet
important.
meeting like, John? And word for word, so it's not just that it was great because it's an awesome experience.
It was very daunting.
Walking in there.
How are you feeling?
Yeah.
Well,
like I belong. I've arrived.
No, well, I mean, it was like, it was a combination of all of that.
Yeah.
But the big surprise for me was just how disorganized government is.
Is it?
As disorganized as you think it looks from the outside, it's 1,000 times worse when you get in there.
Wow.
You get told at the last minute your cabinet meetings move from Pretoria to Cape Town. You get last minute notice that you've got to be, somewhere for some function. It really is. And what also amazes me how paper-based government is still. It's
so true. Yeah.
I mean, we must be slaughtering
the memos,
forests of trees every year just with the amount of paperwork and how paper-based the system is. So one of the things we're looking at in our department, and I know other DM ministers doing it, is how we can move more stuff onto the digital platform.
So
I still have to physically sign paper documents within government.
They haven't gone to a stamp yet?
No. Even a digital
signature.
So, these are the things that really surprised me. So I was quite surprised.
So old school.
Yeah. But, and the meetings can be very long as well. Very, very long.
But there's a rumor that you're actually the real president of cabinet.
Is it true? Tell us now.
I don't think that's true. 2029 maybe. Not now.
So John, talking about walking into offices, you went to the Oval Office, the big, beautiful Oval Office.
Something similar to our seat over here.
Right? And I don't want to know what it was like inside. I want to know what it was like in the corridors. How was it?
Yeah, it was pretty surreal. I'm a political junkie like all of you, so we've all watched The West Wing.
Yeah.
And
Of course.
House of Cards.
all of those things. So, to go into a place like that is pretty hectic. But, I mean, it starts at the hotel where you're staying.
Yeah.
They have a room there where you get brought in, they search you, and you have to hand over all your electronic devices, watches, phones, everything.
Okay.
They then move you to a sterile room from there, which then once you're in there, you're not allowed to exit.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you wait for the White House to summon you. And when the White House gives the go-ahead, you get loaded into these vehicles. And it literally took us 6 minutes from the hotel. Full road closure, blue light, the whole way. It took us 6 minutes to get from from the hotel where we were staying to the gates of the White House. So that was pretty intense. And then, you're going in there and you're going into a big match. I turned to Ernie Els and I said, I now know how the Springboks must feel in a World Cup final on the team bus on the way to the stadium. And it's sort of, this is big stake stuff.
Yeah.
And then you through those gates there with these motorcycle riders and everything, and then you get out and you've just got this bank of media
from all over.
there. And then we went in and the president and his team are standing. It's sort of, it almost doesn't feel real. Like you almost feel you're going to wake up and you say, I dream I was in the White House. But everything's a lot smaller than it looks.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I went. President Trump took me. After I'd commented on his desk, he said, I see a man who loves his history. So it took me through into this room just off the Oval Office, and which is a lot smaller than it looks in real life, let me tell you. It looks a lot bigger in Frank Underwood and Jeb Bartlett's administration. It's actually a really small space, actually. So it took me through this memorabilia room and that sort of thing, and it was showing me some of the stuff and the sort of floor-to-ceiling Trump caps and shirts and key rings and Bibles and all sorts of stuff there. So it was very, very, very interesting. Is
Donald off camera the same person on camera?
He's exactly as he is in real life.
So same person.
And one of the first things my daughters asked me when I got back, is he orange? And I said, no, he's not. He's actually got the same complexion as Dean McPherson.
Shots fired.
It starts there.
So he's not orange, I can confirm that. And he's actually a very funny guy. Like a really interesting, engaging person that you would want to have a conversation with. So, I'm sure that meeting was hectic, but I've certainly taken
You've spoken everywhere. You've spoken on big stages. You've spoken in front of thousands of people, and you do it brilliantly, Well, what was it like to open your mouth in the Oval Office?
Well, it was such a surprise. First of all, we went into that meeting agreeing that only the president would speak.
Correct.
Okay, cool.
And that we were just there to provide the support. And,
protocol,
and
president,
President, they'll speak. We've just got to be there to smile and wave.
Yeah.
And then the president threw the ball to me, and it was sort of suddenly you've got to think what to say. And, And I just felt, let's rather play up why we formed the GNU. Because he had just shown that video, and none of us were expecting that.
That's embarrassing.
Boy, when those lights went down, I thought, what's going to happen here? All I could say afterwards is, thank goodness nobody in that room was in any of those videos.
Exactly.
Because that would have been all kinds of awkward.
There's billions of people are watching this.
And I got the impression in the discussions afterwards that they were under the impression that Malema was part of government. And I suppose it's a function of their system. They don't have a parliamentary system.
They don't,
So I think they kind of thought he was a government official saying those things. And so I thought it was very important that we said this is why we formed the GNU. Now, I know there's some people who said, you should have turned on the president. And,
no, we don't do that.
But it's just, it wouldn't have achieved anything.
We're there to
I remember as well, I'm there to save my farmers from 30% tariffs.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not going to be doing anything to try and antagonize the situation any further. I went there to bat for agriculture, and that's certainly some of the stuff we landed in the.
But you were brilliant there, John. I must be honest.
I must say
this.
as well. Because sometimes we fight internally.
Yeah.
We'll go to war with Makar. We'll fight each other. But when we step outside of that, we have to unite, and we have to come and bat for South Africa, not for any political party, but for the country.
That's what frustrated me. I just have got this cacophony from mainly from the right in the South African spectrum, saying, you should have used it as an opportunity to get one over. And I don't think it would have achieved anything. I think what it would have done is probably shown disunity in the government, and secondly, I think it would have then affirmed perhaps some of the misperceptions that the American administration has about South Africa.
I think it speaks to the maturity of politics, because at that point you're representing the country.
Yes.
It's not a case of representing a party.
Yes.
Still within what you provided in your comments, you're driving our policy, which is great. You're fighting for those farmers, etc. But to have fought the president or openly criticized your president,
We wouldn't have done anything.
it would have been much more negative towards us as an organization.
And I can just
etc.
say this as well. I mean, obviously that was the floor show, when the media and that were there. The lunch was wonderful.
Tell us about
Okay.
it.
It was
Yeah.
warm. It was
Caviar?
engaging. No. It was a very simple menu, actually, and no alcohol.
Yeah, he doesn't drink at all.
No.
Donald Trump
Dad
doesn't
Coke,
touch.
Dad Coke and McDonald's. We had a very, very nice meal, a very simple meal. Started with a salad. They had chicken and vegetables and a bit of rice, followed by a delicious peach cheesecake and then tea and coffee. But the meeting went on a lot longer than it was expected to go on.
Okay.
I think it was very good to have the golfers there. Trump's got an encyclopedic
Yes,
knowledge
he
of
loves
golf.
it.
does.
He
Absolutely.
loves it.
I mean, we sat
Smart
down for the
move.
lunch and he said to Ernie, I remember, and I think it was the British Open, where you used the 5-iron and you were on the green and you sunk that 3-foot putt, and Ernie couldn't even remember it.
And he's like, yeah, that's
He's
right.
got this encyclopedic
Yeah.
knowledge about golf. So I think having the golfers, he also sort of helped set the tone for
Definitely.
the lunch, and we got to talk about some pretty cool stuff, and the lunch went really well. It went over time from what it should have. As I said, President Trump is a warm and generous and engaging host, and really puts you at ease, and really the kind of guy you'd like to have a beer with, or a Diet Coke with.
Or Diet Coke with. Was Melania Trump there?
No, she wasn't there.
Is Barron as tall as he looks?
he was,
wasn't
none of
there
them
too?
were there, so we had.
Did you go upstairs though?
No.
You weren't allowed?
No, don't go upstairs. I didn't get to see the official. We went down the corridor where Leo McGarry would sit.
Yes.
What was the reaction of Elon Musk throughout the entire? Because, we could see glimpses of him on camera, but I don't know, what was his reaction when everyone was speaking, and everyone else, including yourself?
Elon, interesting guy, didn't have a lot to say. Over the lunch, obviously he's very exercised about vehicle tariffs and the like, and very exercised about technology and what's required, particularly rare earth minerals and the like that are going to be required to drive new tech. I mean, there was a long discussion about magnets. I didn't know how important magnets were for new technology, but they're apparently very, very important. And South Africa has a lot of the raw materials and rare earth minerals for magnets. But very little input from Elon. Very interesting guy. Looks quite introverted to me. I mean, obviously I had a chance to have a brief chat. I said, we're very proud as South Africans about what he's achieved, and really he has achieved
a lot. He has
tremendous things. And if we can get Starlink here, I think it's going to transform us as a country, particularly in our peri-urban and rural areas.
Starlink is one of many options that are there. I don't know, we spoke to someone else about the Chinese satellites and whoever else's satellites. The fact of the matter is that the more suppliers you have of any product, the better for the end consumer, right? You talk about electricity, and this is the sad reality about Eskom. There's one electricity supplier. You go to Europe and there's 4 or 5 different gas companies, right? If you're not happy with the one, you go to the next one. You're not happy with that one. And what does it do? It keeps driving down price so that the economy grows. And so if we can get
in the market.
more competition, and look, it's unheard of. We only have, 2 or 3 main data suppliers in South Africa. That shouldn't be the case.
But also, again, I mean, may I be selfish here?
You may.
From an agriculture perspective, it is just such a game changer. A lot of our agriculture takes place in rural areas, which are bedeviled by poor connectivity.
Correct.
And just the applications on rural safety, ending farm attacks and farm murders, being able to bring better policing, drone technology, patrolling, cameras all linked up there, are massively important. But also, I mean, there's more technology in the modern cell phone than the Apollo 11 mission that went to the moon.
What's that?
It's my daughter's rocket that she flew there.
There we go. Steenhuisen link.
So I mean, as I say, I'm not sold on Starlink, but I mean, the sooner we can get that in there, just think about it. I can put an extension officer into the pocket of every single rural farmer.
Correct.
He can take a picture of a cow that is sick and it can get a diagnosis and a remedy immediately.
So cool. On the
It's a
phone.
notifiable disease. It can alert the authorities. So just from an agricultural perspective, rural safety and security, farmer applications, We can send hydrographs from satellite to each farmer about rainfall, about soil quality, all of these things.
Wow.
And we could put an extension office in the pocket of every single farmer, whether they're a subsistence farmer or whether they're a mega farmer. And
I can't agree with you. I can't disagree with you at all. Sorry, I can't disagree with you at all. We spoke to Solly. And Solly was saying how he gets into his village, and once he's there, he can't even download his emails properly. And that's just something as basic as emails.
Sounds like heaven.
You know what?
I'm going to Solly's for the weekend.
Leave me alone.
There's a guy in rural KZN that's got 50 cows, and he's got a problem.
And he doesn't know.
How long does it take him to try and resolve
just
this?
think about it. He waits 2 weeks for an extension officer to get there and diagnose his cow as having foot and mouth. By that time, it's spread to not only his herd, but to the neighbour's herd.
Yeah.
Whereas he could have got advice, isolate the animal immediately, put it in an isolation pen, and do the following protocols.
Yeah.
These are the symptoms you must observe in your others. But it can be doing for anything from crop diseases to various pests, and you could give the farmer instant solutions to the problems that they're facing.
You know what I love about it is we must always, as a country, be innovative.
Yeah.
And we must constantly strive for innovation.
Absolutely.
And you know what you're talking about, the app on the phone, that's innovating. That's something, future thinking. And I want to know what other sort of innovative ideas are you guys coming up with? Again, it's 2025.
Yeah, exactly. And you're absolutely right. And that's why we've got to move away from paper.
So please save the trees.
The next big thing that I'm working on is with the department. We do all the registrations for new fertilizers, new pesticides, and the like. And all the processing that's done under what's called Act 36 application. So your big producers then apply for licensing in South Africa, and there's a process. Currently, it's a paper-based process. People physically move a file full of paper to another, from desk to desk to desk. Invariably, it gets stuck on someone's desk and under a whole lot of other stuff and gets lost. And people are waiting 2 or 3 years sometimes more for these. So we're busy working on, together with the departmental officials, a online system now to move all of this online. So that will ensure that the won't be able to be processed unless all the documentation is provided up front. And then you'll be able to track where it is. And then as a minister, I can have a dashboard where I can see how many are outstanding still and allow me to intervene then. We want to do the same for subdivisions and the like, and try and move as much as possible into online systems. And this is going to be a game changer, and it's been facilitated through Solly Malatsi and getting rid and breaking the monopoly of CETA on this particular situation. And I'll tell you a funny story about CETA. Alan Knott Craig and I were at the Black Business Council recently, and he got the contract to do Tshwane's free Wi-Fi, public Wi-Fi. And anyway, he was a bit concerned that the contract that had been given to him by the city wasn't kosher, and so he took it to National Treasury in Pretoria to just have a look through the contract, and they picked up one or two things. They said this is a problem. So he said to them at National Treasury, okay, well, I'm just going to go and I'm going to can this project for now until I can get all this right. And they said, no, whatever you do, don't do that. He said, we are so unreliable with CETA here that we sit in the corner of the office here and use the public Wi-Fi to power our system. So you've got National Treasury officials having to rely on the free public Wi-Fi in Tshwane because CETA can't come. I mean, I go through days, sometimes 3 days a week, where my emails just don't work. And so, and it's again, it comes down to monopolies. You spoke about it there in the gas and electricity, and we've got to have more options as government.
You have to.
Locked into a CETA, and that's why what Solly's done with CETAs is so game-changing as well. So hopefully those poor Treasury officials can get off the Tshwane public Wi-Fi and onto a decent Wi-Fi.
Absolutely.
John, tell me, as leader of the party now, we've all been part of it, but you've led the way. You've taken us to government, and we're in the GNU now, and there are many challenges that come with being in the GNU. What does the future hold for South Africa? Both good and bad.
Well, I think it's a very good. I think it's a good question that you asked, and I think it's a timeliest question to ask, because I see there's a lot of talking heads and analysts that are very upset that we didn't just walk away from government in this last week. And, everyone's got an opinion.
Yeah.
But until you're actually in the arena, those opinions are worthless. So seeing Justice Malala and other nonsense that they write, it really is frustrating because, A, they don't have a grip. They're not in the actual arena. They don't know the real dynamics here. And the reality is, if we walk away from government, we must know there are going to be serious consequences for South Africa because a new government will be formed, excluding the DA, and the various permutations that government could take are disastrous. On the one hand, you could have a government with a very small majority that is essentially unstable because it literally exists from vote to vote to vote to vote in the NA. Or you could have a government with a majority where the tail that's wagging the dog is MK or the EFF. And we've seen what happens to countries when those policies and principles are applied. Poverty increases, unemployment increases, human misery increases exponentially, wherever those radical policies are pronounced by the EFF and MK. And I think a lot of people just think, oh, well, you chicken because you didn't dump the GNU.
No, that's
I've got 3 daughters. I don't have a passport for any other country.
Same.
I've got to make this country work for me and my family as well. So yes, I wear a political hat, but I also wear a hat as someone who's actually got to live here. I can't up sticks like some billionaire and go and live somewhere else. Justice Malala sits in California drinking a Sonoma Valley Chardonnay. I've got to make this place work. I don't have the luxury of going to sit in California. And, I'm a South African, and this is the only place I have to stay. And I'm not going to just hand it over to a rabble that are going to then destroy the country and destroy the future of not only my children, but of the children of every other South African. So I think that people need to just also put things in perspective sometimes, that, yes, we're in the GNU, we're here to create jobs and grow the economy, and yes, we're making sure that we are holding government accountable and doing all of those things still. But it is not an exact science. And the fog of war makes it very difficult sometimes to see the way through.
Absolutely.
But I can tell you now, people need to think very, very carefully about what a GNU looks like without the DA and think very, very carefully about what happens to South Africa if the DA just says, oh, well, stuff this, we're out, off we go. That's not to say we won't go, and I think that this recent firing of Andrew Whitfield is a really serious shot across the bows. I don't think it would have cost the president anything to have got rid of some of the other cabinet ministers at the same time. Why is it that he's trying to portray himself as a tough guy using a DA MP instead of actually showing that he can crack the whip in his own party? Also, the DA is not the problem here. Andrew Whitfield's not stealing money from government.
He's written letters, he's asked.
Andrew Whitfield is not sitting in front of a parliamentary portfolio chewing gum and giving the middle finger to Parliament, telling a pack of lies and telling other people to lie. He hasn't been involved in using VBS money to buy coffee shops.
Or a lot of money.
So why don't you sweep outside your own doorstep to show that you're a tough guy, rather than actually picking on a target that actually did not deserve what came his way?
It's a complete nonsense for me. It's a complete nonsense. I'll be honest with you. In the beginning, I wasn't too sold on the GNU, but when you start speaking to people in constituencies, the GNU is doing amazing. The DA is making such a difference. It's those people that matter. Like you said, it's about this normal everyday South African and how we can change their life that makes the difference. And personally, we don't have time for egos. We don't have time to be, we disrespected, we're going to leave. None of that matters when it comes to the bread and butter issues of making a difference and rescuing South Africa.
If you like Peter Bruce and you sit in the pub at Stanford and write your column on the back of the bar mat, it's very easy to bring your own perspective to what you think. But are you really in touch with what's happening out there? Are you looking at polling? Are you looking at things objectively and in an analytical way? And Do I make every call absolutely right? No, not at all. I've made wrong calls in the past. I'll continue to make wrong calls. I'm a human being, and until we invent AI politicians or AI parliaments, you're going to have human error that comes in here. And I'm not perfect, but goodness me, I think I've got a lot more right than I've got wrong. And I think the DA has got plenty more right than it has got wrong over the course of the last. And I sometimes ask South Africans to just close their eyes. Just for 3 or 4 minutes and reflect on what South Africa would look like
under that
without the DA. Without the DA. And then to close their eyes for another 3 minutes and think about what South Africa would look like if the DA was in power and in charge. Look what we've done with 6 portfolios. 6 portfolios out of 30-something.
Correct.
Shifted the needle, growing the economy, creating jobs, bringing in tourists, making sure our children can read, lowering the costs of internet and data, making sure more people participate in the value chains and are linked with markets and agriculture. 6 portfolios. Can you imagine what's going to be like when we've got 20 or 25 portfolios out of the 30-something? Imagine then what South Africa would look like. And that's what we've got to keep fighting for. And that's why these analysts don't really help. Don't really help. They don't really help with their commentary. Their ill-informed commentary. And look, I mean, I'll defend to their death the right to be able to spew their poison out. But the point is, I think that the broader public get what this is about and understand. And that is why the DA is growing.
Correct.
Every by-election, we're growing. We're the only larger party that's growing. We're the only party that came back after this election with more, one of the major parties that came back with more seats than we had before the election. And it just never ceases to amaze me. Where's the same barometer for Mashaba and Malema
please.
and all these Holomisa and all of these other
just
people?
Be consistent.
It bothers me.
Be consistent.
Politics is the cornerstone of everything we do. Politicians have managed to screw politics up to the world. And John mentions how he personally wants to fight for this country. He's got 3 daughters, a family, etc. And I look at it myself, 3 boys.
Oh, we should talk.
I was just going to tell you.
The bola is going to be expensive.
And listen, I know the difference now between Bonsmara and Beefmasters. It's going to cost you.
Listen, there are many people that want the real Mckenzie surname. But the point is, I may have had opportunities to leave this country ages ago, but I don't want to. But I need to fight to make sure, as John says, that my 3 boys have a country that they can be proud of as well. And I think that is that's the heartbeat of every mother. That's the heartbeat of every father, whether they are well off, whether they are poor, whether they are middle class in this country. The heartbeat of those people is to see this country succeed for their children. And so we should never, ever pull back just because it seems popular to pull back.
How do I look my voters in the eye? And say, well, we've thrown you to the wolves because of X, Y, and Z. They're not going to forgive us, and we need to be very mindful of that. Of that fact.
I agree with you.
I am in and do what I do because I have a passion for the people of this country.
The corruption that is pervasive in the state. If now a party like the MK, so unstable. I think they've had almost 7, if not
6.
10 SGs. I think their chief whip now is only a week in parliament. They want her out. So if that party were to come into government, what impact would it have in terms of fighting corruption, but also the instability that will happen in the state and the fight
for corruption?
MK exists for one purpose only.
It's to steal.
It's a vehicle to get the people who have now been pushed away from the trough back into the trough. That's what it exists for. It's a one-man-led show.
It's a family
very
business.
Clear family business. And also, look at what they want for South Africa. And that's the thing that amazes me, that people just say, oh, well, you must just leave. Look what we'll be handing the country over to. A party that doesn't believe in courts, believes that parliamentary sovereignty should rail, that once Parliament decides something, that should be it.
Populist 101. Populist 101.
They want pregnant teenagers taken to Robben Island.
Scary.
They want to nationalize banks. They want to
Populist 101.
It's going to make Venezuela look like a picnic. A school picnic if these guys get in. And so that's exactly the point you're making, is that what are we going to hand the country over to that?
2 MK MPs have just been arrested for corruption.
Exactly.
Yes.
But you see, it's the people that were eating, the people that were chowing the money before are looking for a vehicle to get back to chowing the money. Brian Molefe, all of these guys that have been, Siyabonga Gama, all of these people that have been arrested, these are the people that were the architects of state capture.
Yes.
And all they're doing is looking for another vehicle to get back into control so that they can, not that they've gone some Damascene road and all converted to to hands clean.
The soul to Paul.
Yeah, exactly. These are people who want to have created MK as a vehicle to get back into power so that they can carry on where they left off before the Zondo Commission came in.
John, it's not about individuals. It's about a country we're fighting for.
But look, gents, when South Africa hears corruption, they just think of a monetary value.
Yeah.
They stole X amount of money, they're taking X. But corruption is more nuanced than that, right? If we look at state capture, it's integral networks of corrupt people. I mean, I would even argue that cadre deployment is a form of corruption.
Yeah, it is.
Because it's putting people who are not fit for purpose into jobs that they can't even do, earning a whole lot of money because these people earn big bucks in government.
To pave the way to the trough.
Corruption is the reason many people are sitting at home without a job. Corruption is the reason why many of our schools are in the state that they're in and the infrastructure is in terrible condition. Corruption is why we're paying more for electricity every year than ever before. Corruption is why we don't have water in taps or in places around the country. Corruption is why people are suffering. Corruption is why not enough of our young people can access finance to go to university. Because corruption is the opportunity cost of what that money could have bought versus it buying a house, a Lamborghini, a Maserati, overseas holidays for fat cat politicians and others who've stolen it. Each cent of that, had it been applied to the better welfare of our citizens, could be the difference between somebody working today or not working today, or somebody being able to feed their family or not feed their family today. So corruption, it permeates every aspect of our lives. And that's why we should never, ever, ever be sensitized or anodyne about corruption. Corruption literally steals the food off your child's plate at night. That's exactly what it does. And it robs their future. And every parent should see corruption as that.
John, you're leading us to 2029 and you're going to be the president. What are we going to do about fighting corruption?
Yeah, what are we doing to fight corruption?
It's very easy to fight corruption. We've got some of the best laws in the world. The Public Finance Management Act, the Public Audit Act, the Municipal Finance Management Act. All of these things have jail sentences for those who are involved. Can you name me one politician who's gone to jail for corruption and stayed there?
No,
not one.
I can't.
Not one.
Zuma was there for a weekend.
And
exactly.
Sheikh was there for a little bit too.
Until the next golf round.
And that's the point. What you need to do is to make an example out of some high-profile people, send them to jail for a long period of time. It immediately sends the message out. There's a new sheriff in town. We take this in. In the old days, in the medieval times, when they wanted to re-establish law and order, they'd take the criminals and they'd put their heads on spikes in the village. And that would be as a reminder to people that
don't do stupid things.
Don't do silly things. We have not got any major head on a spike yet in jail. And that is why people think corruption pays in the country.
What is your message, John, to, and it's not just to DA supporters, what is your message to South Africans that want to see this country grow? What do they need to do to make sure we get through this corruption and what it's doing to us?
The only thing that they can do is use the most powerful weapon that they have at their disposal. And it's not mshiniwam, it's not stones, it's not tires, it's not bullets, it's a ballot. That is the most powerful weapon that any voter has. So the first thing you've got to make sure is that your ballot is loaded. So you've got to be registered to vote. You've got to make sure you're registered. If you're not registered, you can't vote. And then you need to use that ballot on election day to make your voice heard. And on election day, your ballot weighs exactly the same as mine. It looks exactly the same as mine. It looks the same as Zuma's. It looks the same as Ramaphosa's. It looks the same as Malema's. You've got to use that weapon that our Constitution has given you to go and affect change for your life. You will never have change in your life. You will never build a better future for your children if the current circumstances just continue to prevail.
Absolutely.
You've got to use that weapon that you have, the most powerful weapon in a democracy, and go and put your cross on it and put your ballot into that box. And that is the strongest way to be able to make sure what the voters give us to do. Mm-hmm. You gave us 22%. We've now turned it into 22% in government. Mm-hmm. We've got a local government election coming up. Yeah. Our municipalities are on crisis.
Sure.
If you want water in your taps, if you want electricity in your home, if you want to live in a safe neighborhood, if you want roads that aren't blowing up or riddled with potholes, if you want money being spent on you and not politicians, you've got to vote for it. Yes. It's not going to happen by osmosis or some other primordial event. It's going to happen from you getting up, registering, and voting on election day, and voting for a party with a track record of getting things done, fighting corruption and delivering for everybody.
Yeah,
can I just 100%. Mention it? Vote for it, dear.
Yeah, yes. Absolutely. But John, we know we can't keep you here forever.
Oh, but why? It's such fun.
I know, right? We're having fun too. But, I want to ask you a question. Looking back at 10-year-old little John. Right?
Jeez, imagine that.
What advice would you give 10-year-old John now, and do you think he'll be proud of you?
I'm going to butt in. John has the most amazing mother, Auntie Janine. She's awesome. She's awesome.
What I tell 10-year John is finish your degree.
Yeah.
Okay.
Before you leave university, because it's very important and a lot harder to do when you're late in life, like I'm currently doing through UNISA. But no, I think look, as I said, I've got a lot of things wrong. I'd like to think I've got more things right than wrong. But I'd be very proud if 10-year-old John saw me today and said, you did the best that you could do with what you had. Mm-hmm. And I still believe that public service is the greatest service. And I fundamentally believe that South Africa's best days lie ahead of it. And so I look forward to spending another 20 years making 10-year-old John even prouder.
Yeah. I love that.
Thank you.
John, can you make a commitment that you'll be back on the podcast?
Yes,
of course,
please.
I'll be back with you.
There you go.
This is great fun. Yeah.
Listen, thank you very much, John. Known as John Deere, known as Farmer John, known as the leader.
I just want to give a disclaimer, and my good friend Tommy can prove it. I'm not wearing my bootable shorts today.
But thank you so much, John, and thank you for coming in. And more than anything, thank you for being someone that's fighting for this country.
Yes.
Something that relates to each and every one of us. We want to hear more from you, the listener and the viewer. So drop us your comments. If you want to see John in a bootable shorts, let us know.
Yeah.
So next time he gets back, he'll be here with that.
As soon as we get to X number, you choose the number of subscribers. I'll wear bootable on the set.
I think let's not aim too high. We'll go on 10 subscribers. Listen, thank you very much. We'll see you all soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.